How many of you are running away? And you're probably like, what do you mean running away? Exactly what I'm saying right now. How many of you are trying to numb the thoughts that you have by replacing those with unhealthy behaviors and unhealthy habits? Or even more so, how many of you are pushing away those thoughts and running away from those thoughts because they're uncomfortable and you don't like them and you feel weird? How many of you know that you have bad habits, but you do nothing about it, or you're trying to hide from it by not addressing it with yourself? How many of you are stuck in a loop of sadness, guilt, shame, self-blame, victimhood because you made mistakes and you realized that you weren't exactly what you felt like you should be? How many of you are blaming others for your mishaps or your mistakes, or even better yet, blaming yourself for your mishaps or mistakes and beating yourself up? How many of you have looked in that mirror and you just knew and you just know that you do not like what you see? Whether it be your looks, your personality, who you are, everything about you, you don't like it. It's too hard. It's too hard for you to look in that mirror. You can't love yourself until you face yourself. You want to reach a level of self-love, a level of self-acceptance, a level of unconditional love for yourself, then you have to face yourself. You have to face yourself, right? Now, what does it mean to face yourself? Facing yourself means to acknowledge yourself. It's to acknowledge all the things that you are currently going through. It's to acknowledge your feelings. It's to acknowledge your wants. It's to acknowledge your needs. It's to acknowledge your past and the things that have hurt you. It's to acknowledge who you are and who you feel like you've become because of things in your circumstances or things in your life. It's to acknowledge the hurt, the guilt, the shame, the pain, the mistakes. It's to look in that mirror and be okay with the good, the bad, the ugly. It's to stop running away and hiding from yourself, but instead you cross that fire, you cross those uncomfortable feelings and you sit with those feelings and you feel who you are, you understand who you are, you ask yourself questions, you become self-aware, you look at that mirror and be like, you know what? It's okay for me not to be perfect. It's okay for me to make mistakes. It's okay actually, it's not okay that this thing happened to me, but it is okay for me to let go. It is okay for me to heal from it. It is okay for me to make mistakes. There is nothing wrong with me. It's to know that you are enough, but in order to know that you are enough, you have to face the uncomfortable feelings that you're feeling. You want to learn how to love yourself? You have to be accountable and you have to face yourself. You have to face the raw, the honest truth about yourself, the raw, honest things about yourself. You need to face the things that you have been suppressing, the feelings you've been suppressing, the anger that you've been suppressing, the uncomfortability that you've been suppressing, all the things that have hurt you in the past that have led you to who you are now. That is the key. You don't hide things from yourself just because you feel a level of shame, guilt, pain. You acknowledge it with yourself. Now, all that I said is very hard to do, so I'm going to acknowledge that. So let's get into my talking points on how to actually reach a level of self-love. What is true self-love and how do you achieve it? Now, if you've been here for a while now, you may know my self-love story. You may know that I've been on my self-love journey for 5 years now, and you may know that I have had trouble accepting myself. I have had trouble looking in that mirror and generally thinking I'm beautiful because of mistakes I've made, or guilt, like pain or guilt or shame that I've had, or just in general, just feeling like I wasn't beautiful physically or even internally. And when I embarked on my self-love journey, I thought things could be fixable. Like, I thought that I needed to fix my looks. I needed to fix every physical thing about me. So So I started off my self-love journey just trying to grow up my hair. My hair is long. Okay. It's long. It's to my booty. I don't know why I said it like that, but it's long. And I started learning how to do makeup. I started going to the gym. And honestly, when I first started going to the gym, it was more about like physical. Now I go to the gym for my mental, physical after that. But all these things I started because I was so uncomfortable with myself. At the time I was going through something really traumatic for me. I never talk about what it is, but it was something that has forever changed my life because it jump-started my self-love journey. And I definitely needed that pain and guilt and shame and mistake guilt and shame and pain. I needed that to jumpstart my self-love journey and to look within the mirror and be like, something has to change, right? But essentially when I started, I thought it was about my looks. I thought it was about like, maybe I'm just not good enough because I don't look great, or like, at the time, now I think I look lovely, but at the time these were my feelings. I was looking in that mirror. I was 21, and I'm looking at myself and I'm trying to fix these things, like have the makeup on, do my hair, grow out my hair, wear different outfits, go to the gym. And it wasn't until I did these things that I realized that I still felt bad. I still felt I didn't fall in love with myself. I wasn't in love with myself at the time. Like, I thought these things, achieving this physical thing, or even just getting compliments about my looks, like that would be the ultimate self-love. Like that meant I loved myself, or walking in the room and just looking good and everybody be like, oh, you look good, And I thought that was what self-love was. I don't know. I thought self-love also was just like walking out and just being confident every time you out into the world, not realizing that self-love was never being perfect. Self-love was never just being perfect, or self-love wasn't trying to mask the pain, doing all those things, like the physical things, was me trying to mask the pain, was me trying to hide from myself, hide from how I truly was feeling, hide from those internal thoughts that was messing with me, or hide from the guilt, the shame, the pain, the healing process. I was trying to hide from it by doing these things that I thought would make me love myself. And that is the lie that's being told to you. You think that because maybe you feel like you're not the beauty standard, that you can't love yourself, right? But in all reality, if you became your own beauty standard and you saw the beauty in you beyond the surface level, you'd realize that you are beautiful. You realize that you don't need anybody else's validation. You realize that you don't need to look like what everybody else wants you to look like in order to love yourself, right? In order to think you look good, you don't have to be like what everybody else thinks. You don't have to be like what everybody else says. But the reason you feel like that is because of like the media, or the things that are being portrayed, or maybe your past and you haven't healed from it, or maybe you got bullied, or there's so many circumstances that have led us to believing this thing about ourselves, right? True self-love isn't masking the pain. True self-love isn't fixing everything about you because you feel like everything like about you was so wrong, right? It's okay to change yourself, because I certainly did. Like I said, I grew up my hair, I did all this stuff, but if you do all these changes without doing the internal work, you are going to realize that no amount of physical work is going to fix that internal thing about you right now. Like, it's not going to fix how you feel about yourself. It's not. Trust me. I'm speaking from experience. It's not, generally, I do think I'm beautiful physically, very, but I don't think I could have reached that level of love for myself, that like this deep level of self-love for myself, if I didn't work on myself internally. Because when I was working on myself physically, no amount of physical work could ever make me see the beauty that was inside of me, ever. Because at the end of the day, these looks are going to go. At the end of the day, the makeup has to come off, right? And I think I look great without makeup, but I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, these things aren't going to be here, right? And at the end of the day, you aren't always going to walk out and feel confident in yourself. But does that mean you should love yourself any less? Does that mean that you aren't lovable because you feel like, oh, you had a bad day, maybe you're depressed today and you haven't gotten out the bed? Does that mean you should be loved any less? Does that mean you should love yourself any less? Or does that mean that you should love yourself more? Or your self-love shouldn't even shift? Your self-love shouldn't even shift, right? So when I say that true self-love means to face yourself, it means to look at yourself in the mirror and face the internal things about you. Face the things that you are going through internally and battling with that, right? Going at war with it, because baby, you are at war right now, okay? You may not be feeling the best about how you look. You may not be feeling the best about your personality or who you are, but baby, you got to get to know yourself. You got to get to know yourself past what society thinks about you. You got to get to know yourself past what people have said about you. You have to get to know yourself past the bullying. You have to get to know yourself past your mistakes. You have to allow yourself to make mistakes. That's what that is. It's looking at yourself in that mirror, looking at yourself beyond that physical looks, looking at yourself underneath the surface, right? And being like, you know what, I made this mistake, but that's okay, because next time I'm not going to make that mistake again. Or I didn't know better back then. Or looking at yourself and being like, I may be shameful of my past, or maybe shameful of the things that people have said about me, but realizing that like what they said about me isn't true, or isn't what I should believe about me, right? It's healing from what people have done to you, maybe what you've done to yourself, and it's allowing yourself to be imperfect. It's allowing yourself to be like, you know what, it's okay. It may not be okay that I went through these things, but it is okay for me to let go, heal, move on. Stop being afraid of the feelings that you're feeling, because it's hard. Like the intensity of trying to first of all, what's harder is trying to run away from the feelings that you feel, right? It's trying to mask it with something like your bad habits. Maybe you're masking how you feel with bad habits, or partying every weekend. Not saying that there's anything wrong with partying, but maybe you are masking with trying to party every weekend. But the pain you are feeling is more intensified when you do not acknowledge the pain you feel, or you don't acknowledge like the hurt the things that you've gone through, right? You go about life just on, I guess, like autopilot. Like you're just on autopilot. You're just there, but you're not really there, because you haven't acknowledged your feelings. You haven't acknowledged who you are. You haven't acknowledged the hurt, the pain, the guilt, the shame, whatever you're going through, right? Or even just feeling like you're not beautiful or your looks are not good. Why haven't you acknowledged that? Why haven't you ask yourself these questions? Oh, why don't I think I'm beautiful? Why do I feel like I'm ugly or whatever? Is it because of what people have said about me? Is it because of the media? Oh, babe, if you feel that way, if you don't love yourself based on your looks, that means that you have to dig that up. You have to figure out where it came from, whether it came from the media, or maybe it came from how society has treated you, or maybe it came from that. And no, it's not okay. Now it is your job to fix it. And that sucks. Honestly, it does suck, but it is your job to acknowledge it. And how you acknowledge that, how do you achieve that? How do you achieve looking at yourself like you look good, whether you're wearing makeup, without makeup, with a filter, without a filter? How do you love yourself internally? You go back to the things that people have said about you, right? You go back to those things. You go back to what the media has said about you. You go back to the things that like subconsciously you believe that you're thinking about. You start to spend time with yourself and you be like, okay, why do I think these things about myself? Why do I think that I'm not beautiful? Did I get the self-validation that I should have got maybe from my parents? Or did I get like enough love and attention? Like you ask yourself these questions, right? And when you ask yourself these questions, you reach a level of self-awareness and you're like, oh my God, that's why I feel like this. Now, when you get to this point, it's going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel guilty. You might feel shame. You might feel a little pain from just like feeling this way, because people like things like you just feel uncomfortable. You're like, why do I feel like this? I don't want to feel like this, Or you might just feel uncomfortable from from the things that have happened to you or the things that you need to heal from. But when you're feeling uncomfortable, you sit in those feelings. You don't hide from those feelings. You face those feelings head on, you know? And when you face those feelings, you're sitting there, you're probably crying, you're probably upset, right? But while you're going through this healing process, you're also challenging your thoughts, right? Challenge them. And what I mean by this is, if you think that you're not good looking, say you dig up all this stuff, you dig up your past, you dig up why you feel the way you feel. Maybe you got bullied and people said stuff about you. You dig it up and you're like, okay, this is why I feel like this. You're sitting in these feelings. Now you're challenging it. And when you challenge them, this is what I would do. When I did to fall in love with my looks, really was to challenge it, right? And when I challenged it, I looked in the mirror and I told myself that I was beautiful, despite what I was telling myself in my head, or maybe despite what people have told me when I was a little girl or whatever. Or, you know, and this was without makeup on, with makeup on, without the filter, with the filter, like on Snapchat or YouTube or whatever. I mean, not YouTube, but Snapchat or Instagram. Without those things, I started to post myself without makeup. I started to wear makeup because I love makeup. Okay, I ain't gonna lie. Most of the time I am wearing makeup, but I know after this stuff comes off that I'm still beautiful, because I have in turn, like I haven't placed my self-love on how I look, right? But this is for the people that need to challenge how they feel about themselves, you know. I also like follow people that look like you, or follow people that exhibit that beauty that you have, that you've been suppressing, that you've been running away from, and you know, follow people that actually look like you or act like you. And this is the same thing you can do with anything. You can do this for your looks, you can do this for your personality. If you feel like you don't have the greatest personality, okay, go back to those steps of digging up why you feel the way you feel. Maybe you got rejected a lot when you were younger. You barely had any friends. Okay, now it's your job to go make some friends. It's your job to be yourself, to figure out who you are. I have a video on how to be yourself, by the way. But it's your job to figure out who you are, and then to be like, you know what, I don't care. I'm going to be unapologetically myself. And because I'm unapologetically myself and I'm going out into the world to be myself, then you are going to find the people that actually love you for you. You're going to find the people that are like, you know what, I love this girl because she's herself, you know, and I've been looking for her, you know, I've been looking for who she is. And that's how you challenge how you feel, right? That's how you reach a level of self-love. It's doing the things you do. It's doing these things without judgment, right? It's doing these things. It's also facing yourself with the acknowledgement that you may feel a little bit of judgment. You may judge yourself for whatever you're going through or how you feel or your past, but it's also getting past that judgment and being like, you know what, it's okay for me to feel like this. It's okay that I have to heal from this thing. It's getting past those shameful feelings. It's allowing yourself to feel, but then also getting past those feelings and challenging them, going out into the world and being who you are despite what people think, right? And then challenging yourself is to prove to yourself that you are enough. And when I say to prove to yourself, I don't mean that you have to prove that you are enough in a sense of like you're not already enough, because you are. But when I say to prove to yourself that you are enough, I mean, odds are you have proven to yourself that you aren't enough by not being yourself, but also by hiding your feelings, by suppressing your feelings, by not giving yourself your wants or your needs, or like aligning yourself to your higher self or aligning yourself to who you are, right? So you have told yourself that you're not enough by doing those things. Now it's time for you to tell yourself that you are enough. And like I said in the previously, you gotta start being who you are. You gotta accept yourself. And once you spend that time with yourself and you heal and you go out and challenge your thoughts by being who you are, being yourself, or wearing the outfit you want to wear, the makeup, or whatever you want to do, whatever you feel like you want to do, but also accepting yourself internally. So accepting like the things that you like or who you are, or, you know, your personality, and then you challenge those things. That is proving to yourself that you're enough. That is telling yourself, you know what, it's okay for me to show up like who I am. And that is like you reach this big level of self-love just by doing that, because now you're telling yourself subconsciously that, hey, I'm enough as I am, I am enough as I am. But like I said, it doesn't mean that you aren't allowed to make changes. You can still make those changes, but you need to accept yourself before you make those changes. Self-love is loving yourself beyond those imperfections. Self-love is loving yourself beyond your circumstances. Self-love, loving yourself despite the imperfections. You see, that's how you reach a level of self-love. You love yourself despite those imperfections. You love yourself despite those mistakes. You love yourself despite like anything, you choose yourself. I have a video on another video on self-love about choosing yourself, and that one's good too. Like, please go watch that one. But you choose yourself every time. I don't care how much it hurts you. Like people may hurt you, but at the end of the day, you choose yourself by walking away. You choose yourself by acknowledging your feelings. You choose yourself by acknowledging your boundaries. You choose yourself just by being yourself. You choose you. That is the true meaning of self-love. And yeah, like I said, it's gonna take time. It's gonna take some self-awareness and asking yourself questions, but also challenging those thoughts. But babe, I will not go back to not loving who I am. And honestly, once you love the internal, you start to love the external despite what you look like. And even when you are insecure, because there are days where you can still be insecure, your self-love still should not shift for yourself, right? You may be like, okay, I do look a mess today, but baby, I still love myself and I'm gonna still choose myself every time. Period. Okay, let's get to the next point, right? How do you move past the guilt, the shame, and the self-blame, right? Because that's what facing yourself does bring up. That's what facing your mistakes does bring those feelings up. Facing like the healing process or facing the things that people have said about you or the things that you went through brings that up. But how do you move past those feelings, right? And I feel like I talked a little bit about it, but I want to specifically have a point about it, right? You have to, like I said earlier, dig it up, right? You have to sit in those feelings. And when you sit in those feelings, you have to affirm to yourself. You have to acknowledge yourself and be like, look, I was in survival mode. I wasn't okay. At the time, maybe I made this mistake because I wasn't okay. Maybe I made this mistake because I didn't know better. Right? That's okay, because none of us know better, even if I don't care if you over here like 70 years old and you're like, dang, I should have knew better. Like, girl, maybe you didn't know better. Maybe you didn't have the capacity. I don't care if you made the same mistake over and over again. Baby, you are here now. You were here now. Now, like, you're sitting here now and you acknowledge that mistake now. And now you're like, okay, I know better, right? Now that you know better, what can you do to do better? Because that is how you acknowledge that shame, that guilt, that pain. You sit in those feelings, you dig it up, but then you acknowledge it and you're like, you know what? What can I do to be better? You realize that you needed those mistakes in order to become the best version of yourself. You realize you needed those mistakes in order to be able to like stand tall right now, like to be able to fly differently, to be able to soar different heights, right? Because how can you become the best version of yourself if you don't make mistakes? How can you become the best version of yourself if you're all perfect, right? You can't become the best version of yourself if you don't make mistakes. How is that possible? You needed those mistakes in order to be the best version of you, right? I think just reframing it and knowing that, hey, I made these mistakes, but I have to realize that this is how I'm going to get to the best version of me. This is how I'm going to use these life lessons to carry me differently in the next season of my life. Baby, it was just a season. You got to start looking at the things the mistakes you made, or like the things that have happened in your life as a season. It was just a season, and I'm not saying it's easy to just brush it off, right? It's not. But if you look at it just like this is just a season, when that season ends, you realize that you can start a new season, because seasons all end, and now you're in a new season, and you're in your blossom season, right? And you're blooming and you're blossoming because of that mistake, period. because anytime I've made a mistake and I've acknowledged it with myself and I faced myself and I sat in the guilt and shame and pain feelings, oh, there was a blossom season after that. That leads me to accountability. Holding yourself accountable, which is something we have been talking about through and through, right? Accountability is acknowledging your feelings, but acknowledging the bad habits you have and acknowledging the parts that you played in it that were your fault. You know, some things weren't your fault, and that's going to be very hard to acknowledge. But the things mistakes that you made that you felt like maybe you could have prevented or whatever, like, you start to take accountability for them and take responsibility for them and be like, you know what? I did that. And the thing is, there is so much power in being able to acknowledge that you made a mistake, because then you realize you weren't perfect, and then you realize, you know what? I don't have to be perfect in order to love myself. I don't have to make perfect decisions in order to love myself. I don't have to make perfect decisions in order to survive. You know, you start to realize, like, hey, I made a mistake, but I'm okay. You know, I'm still standing, I'm still here. If you're still here, baby, oh girl. The resilience you build, the character you build, who you are just builds, the confidence you have in yourself builds. You know, you want to know how to build confidence? Make a mistake. Make a mistake. Challenge yourself too. Get out your comfort zone. Take accountability. That's confidence. That is confidence. And I think the people that don't acknowledge that they've made mistakes and they don't hold themselves accountable, how do you expect to grow? How do you expect to grow? Because we are all imperfect human beings. And yeah, there is no self-love without taking accountability. I don't even care if it's something small that you have to take accountability for. There is no self-love without taking accountability. That is my video. I hope you guys enjoy this video. I've been wanting to do this video for a minute because I feel like the moment I started to take accountability, the moment I started to face my feelings, the moment I started to be myself or face who I was or just be who I am internally, that's when I started to love the physical side of me. That's when I started to really love myself. That's when I found the beauty in myself, my whole self, not just physically but internally. So yes, I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope you have a wonderful day, and bye.